From London's South Bank, I'm Mark Blunden and this is the Standard Podcast. A red Ford Escort Cabriolet XR3i, draped with a giant doily, is among artworks nominated for this year's Turner Prize, as Britain's prestigious contemporary creative competition marks its 40th anniversary. 4 artists who are shortlisted to win the £25,000 prize include 3 Londoners, whose work ranges from traditional drawing to more eccentric installations. Previous winners include household names of Gilbert and George, Damien Hirst and Sir Anthony Gormley, and of course Tracy Emin, who's among celebrated nominees with her unmade bed installation, which was shortlisted in 1999. But as the Turner Prize turns 40, is it still relevant? And are the nominees, including Jasleen Kaur and Claudette Johnson, household names of the future? The competition has certainly been divisive and spoofed over the years, previously derided by the naysayers as banal, cold, mechanical, and even as an annual farce. That one was the Evening Standard's acerbic late art critic, Brian Sewell. And so what is the health of London's post-COVID art scene? And why am I outside the South Bank Centre? Well, it's because the organisation's chief executive, Elaine Beddle, highlighted its financial struggles as the institution needs to find around £50 million to fund urgent repairs. Beddle even suggested in an interview with The Guardian that one solution could be to sell naming rights to this grand brutalist complex. Now let's head back into the studio, where I'm joined on the line by Evening Standard arts correspondent Robert Dex. Rob, how striking are the works shortlisted this year?
Well, it's difficult to say till you've seen them all together. There is a Turner Prize exhibition at Tate Britain where you can go and see the best of these shortlisted works. And some things obviously will work different in a gallery to just reading about them now. But certainly, yes, Jasleen Kaur's work, which includes a red Ford Escort, I imagine will probably stand out. Not only a red Ford Escort, but a red Ford Escort covered in an enormous cotton doily. And not only a red Ford Escort covered in an enormous cotton doily, but a red Ford Escort covered in an enormous cotton doily with a huge sound system in the boot, I think, playing out music, apparently. That, I imagine, will get people's attention as they walk around. I mean, the Turner Prize being the Turner Prize, there are traditional portraits here done in pastel and watercolour, which will please some of the more traditional art aficionados as well. And you never know. It's when you walk around, things often pop out that you maybe didn't expect that, will strike you.
Can you give us a bit of context about the Ford Escort and some of the inspiration for the other entries this year?
She's described it as representing her dad's migrant desires, in quotes. I mean, it comes from a big show which she's done, which is all about sort of growing up in the Sikh community in Glasgow. I think that was pretty much her dad's first car. The speakers, pumping out the music were like the ones made by her older brothers. So it's all about her growing up and her childhood. So there's that, which is obviously very, very striking. But I mean, the other nominated artists, there's people who are putting their sketches next to museum pieces from Oxford that were sort of seized from all over the empire, and that artist is from the Philippines, and it's obviously referencing growing up in the Philippines and coming to this country, and it mentions things like the Benin bronzes, which are famous treasures, some of which have been returned to Africa quite recently. So that's all about conversations of restitution and where art comes from and who gets to keep it and do you give it back and that kind of thing. The more traditional stuff, somebody like Claudette Johnson, so there's pastel watercolour images of black men and women, and she very, very straightforwardly says she wants to tell a story about what she calls our presence, meaning the presence of black people in this country. And so obviously that is all bound up with her background and growing up and where she comes from. And the last artist, it's all about her family background. And I think her grandmother died fairly recently, and it's sort of inspired by her death. And she's from Roma background. So actually, even though all these artists are all doing extremely different things, they're really often powered by, it seems to me, very similar thoughts and emotions and kind of who am I, where do I come from, where am I now, and how have I got from one end to the other end? And that thought process and that emotion has produced hugely different work, but they've all got sort of a common thread running through them, I would say.
And the Turner Prize at 40, is it still relevant in your view?
I think it is. I mean, the Turner Prize was set up essentially to put a focus on contemporary British art. That's literally its job. And here we are talking about contemporary British art, which we don't normally do every other day of the week, do we? So it's working. I think that's what they would say. There will be pictures probably of this car in the newspapers today and tomorrow and on websites. People will be saying, what on earth is that all about? What the hell does she mean by that? That's not art, that is art. And that is literally what the Turner Prize was set up to do. So I would say they're succeeding pretty well.
And how come some of the entries, even those not winning, still remain so memorable all these years later?
The thing with the Turner Prizes, I think when you say Turner Prize to most people, they probably say, "Oh yeah, Tracy Emin's bed," when she had that unmade bed, and two guys leapt on it, didn't they, and tried to make it even more unmade. But of course, famously, Tracy Emin didn't win. So perhaps the most famous ever entry to the Turner Prize is one that didn't win it, which perhaps says something about prizes, isn't it? Because prizes are given out in books, music, whatever, every year, and you look down the big list of winners going back, in this case, 40 years, and some of them you will have never heard of again. And there'll be some people who didn't win who've gone on to be massively successful. That's the nature of a prize, isn't it? It's a bit hit and miss. Sometimes it lands on the right target, and the person that they say is the best is probably the best and goes on to have a great career. Other times they miss out. So yeah, it's funny. It's indelibly linked to Tracy Emin, who is the person who didn't win it. Perhaps says something about the nature of prizes.